So today, thank you for joining. We're going to be looking at some key outcomes, really, to learn about real-life case studies. I'm going to share a few from my previous life. And the main thing today is to share some ideas, to take away some ideas. And this is two ways, because you're going to have more ideas than I have or I have experience in. So please feel free. The question part of it is really important, and it doesn't have to be questions, but questions and ideas. So the way the format will work is I'm going to present for about 20-25 minutes. Then I'm going to invite Juliet Coombe. Juliet, thank you very much for being with us today to share some of your experience. And I'll introduce Juliet in a little bit more detail at that time. And then we're going to close with questions. If you're not on our WhatsApp group, we have a DMC one-way broadcast group, so you don't get any ups and downs. You only get a weekly message from us. If you're not on that group, please WhatsApp me on that number there so I can add you to the group. That's only for DMCs. And state your name and your company. And then do work with us. Some of you are not actively working with us. We'd love to work with you. So please email us at where's@secretsofceyloncollection.com to book a training session, because that's where it unlocks our partnership. So to go straight into it, I first want to start with a couple of definitions. So what is marketing? It's a management process which identifies and anticipates and supplies customer requirements efficiently and profitably. This is the Chartered Institute of Marketing. So when we're talking about marketing in crisis, I'm not talking about how do we handle today's crisis. I'm saying how do we prepare ourselves to handle tomorrow's crisis and the one afterwards. So we need to anticipate, we need to have plans. What is a crisis? In any event or period that will lead to an unstable and dangerous situation. Crises are negative changes in the human or environmental affairs. And I want to stress on this human part, because a lot of the crisis happens in our heads. We start thinking, what if I don't have a salary come May? What if I can't afford to pay salaries? What if? So a lot of this is a mental game, so to speak, but we'll explore that more. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jean-Marc Flambert. I was born in Haiti in the Caribbean, lived in Sri Lanka since 1984. And studied there and worked there and spent some of my time in the UK. But this business, Secrets of Ceylon, is entirely Sri Lankan company. And I also run a representation marketing firm called Your Tourism Partner in the UK. I've been fortunate to work as a DMC, as a hotelier in the MICE market, and of course, marketing some amazing properties. So I'm very lucky. And I count all these experiences when I'm bringing it to you. Over my working career, these are some of the bigger events that have happened. And I've studied these because for the last 10 years, I work with University of Surrey, where I'm a visiting lecturer to their tourism undergraduate and graduate, so their MBA students and their undergraduate program, to share industry experience. And it's always been on crisis, unfortunately. And the ones that have really stood out are listed here. And say, for example, if you talk about the airport attack, it's the phone and text messaging was the main mode of communication at that point. But it was also what amplified that was the fact that our airport was attacked, and stories of using the Air Force planes to fly into our Twin Towers was out before 9/11. So the impact on that was huge for the country. And then I've listed out some others. And I'm going to touch on one or two of the three of these today, because we don't have time to talk on a lot more. Over the years, having worked for three governments, Antigua, Saint Lucia, and Sri Lanka, this is why you see I don't have hair anymore. I lost a lot of that through the stress of working for governments. The good news, or the bad news, is all governments are the same. They're all not as efficient as we like. They all don't move at the pace that we want, and the private sector can move. But they're a necessary regulator in the world balance. So they're very important, and we need to work with them. One of the things that I have, so I have used and created this Actue model as one which I use when doing a crisis. So first, it's about assessment. We used to talk about the golden hour. When crisis happens, you have 1 hour to plan your strategy, to plan your communications before the rest of the world finds out about it. That golden hour no longer exists because very often somebody is filming and sharing that crisis unfold live even before you know that the crisis is happening. Community is so important. We have always put forward that, oh, the customer is the most important, the customer is right, but that is an old saying. The real important people are our community, it's our people. Right now, what's happening in Sri Lanka, we're not directly in the crisis eye of the storm, so to speak, that's happening in the Middle East. But the most important people are the Sri Lankan hoteliers, drivers, suppliers. They are not the tour operators, and they certainly are not the customers, is my personal strong belief, and many people agree with that. Number three is we need to have truth and trust. You need to be honest, and you need to seek a trustworthy spokesman. Most of the time in crisis, the spokesman is the government, and nobody trusts any government politician. So that often has some challenges there itself. Updates are really important. You need to set the expectation and deliver. If you have nothing to say, you need to still have an announcement. You need to send a press release. You need to have a live YouTube video presentation or something like this, where you say, this is what's happening. This is what I know. I don't know anything further. I will be getting back to you in 6 hours. And so at 8 o'clock tonight, we're going to have another, or 9 o'clock tonight, we're going to have the next update. And then you have that update. Even if you have nothing to say at the 9 o'clock update, you set the pace and you say, welcome back. I'm sorry, we don't have an update. We're going to meet in 6 hours time from now at 3 o'clock in the morning. Emotion. We have to be considerate and sensitive. We have to be careful of what emotions are running in those affected and those who are viewing the crisis. And then, of course, we need to have response and recovery, realistic and timely targets for that. So let me just share an example to give you an idea of what I'm talking about here, because that's a lovely little academic thing I've just run through. For those of you who've joined, welcome. We are recording, so you will be able to listen back to this. I will share it with you. So I'm sure most of you know the actor Matt Damon, and next to him is his wife, Luciana. Matt Damon, for those who don't know, stars in Ocean's 10, 11, and many other movies, Bourne Supremacy, Saving Private Ryan, Contagion, etc. He's a Hollywood actor. So I was working for the government of Saint Lucia, and Matt Damon flew a charter plane, JetBlue, a cheap charter plane, full of celebrities out to Saint Lucia, and took over a hotel to have his renewal of vows. And he chose Saint Lucia because his wife is Luciana. So, you know, the island is so-called named after her, or her after the island. They were having a lovely time. Unfortunately, less than 2 or 3 miles away, there's a beautiful waterfall. In fact, the waterfall that's involved in Superman 2, where Superman flies in to find a flower at the waterfall to save his love. And so there was a cruise ship. St. Lucia can have 12 cruise ships in a day. St. Lucia is a population of 180,000, and they can have up to 60,000 people visiting for the day of cruise ships. So cruise ships is a huge part of what happens there. And a group of celebrities were held at gunpoint. So as soon as we found out about this, we made an assessment that yes, these 10 visitors in a group tour were held at gunpoint, and all their jewelry, money, watches, credit cards, all were stolen. They were brought back to the cruise ship. The biggest assessment we realized is that the cruise ship, as you know, sets sail sharp because it has to go on to the next destination. So we had to get on there, take all the statements, and do everything. We had a 2-hour window in which to do everything that needed to be done. The community in this case, there were not St. Lucians who were affected, but the community was this group of 10 people who are now going to be on a huge cruise ship of 4,000 people and you know, be effectively on their own to mull over what had just happened. So we led with truth and trust. The minister got on the ship. He addressed the 10 and the captain of the ship. We requested a separate place for them to be able to sit and discuss it. And we had the police there. We took statements where we could, you know, some helpful hints of what these people look like to try to identify them. The biggest challenge was that they were in shock. And when something happens, you can't talk rationally to somebody who's just been held up at gunpoint. But they were going to get back on the ship. The ship was going to set sail. We were going to lose all our witnesses. We were unable to get the full details. None of them wanted to share their email addresses with us because they were still in shock. So it was a very hard situation because we wanted to help, but they were in shock and they had to then move on. So it was very difficult. And even in terms of the emotions, you know, we couldn't dwell, we couldn't push. So it was a very, very hard situation in this case. And I want to say one thing that you have to be very careful about. This article on the right, Liar, Liar, Pants on Fire, that refers to me. And that's because I made a statement to the Telegraph newspaper and in which I said that this was a rare event and had never happened again. And that was to the best of my knowledge. But according to cruise critic and Jim Walker, this incident had happened before. And so he ran an article, Liar, Liar, Pants on Fire. And that directly related to me. So this is one of the things in crisis you have to be very careful about what you say and how you say it. Because now, anytime I apply for a job, anytime somebody Googles me, they can find Liar, Liar, Pants on Fire, which isn't great for my reputation. A second example, moving from a man-made disaster, which was a gunpoint, to a natural one, I want to talk on Antigua and Barbuda. And Antigua and Barbuda, twin islands, 60% of the 60,000 people live in Antigua, 4,000 live in Barbuda, but it's one country, Antigua and Barbuda. The main island is Antigua. And the distance between the two islands is Colombo to Wadua, just to put it in perspective. So I'm going to share with you the Hurricane Irma. Actually, sorry, I should have left this open. Hurricane Irma came and hit Antigua and Barbuda. It was heading for Antigua, and at the last minute, it swerved northwards and hit Barbuda. But just look at the text. There's no voice here. Cars were flying. 40-foot containers were flying in the air. A child, a 2-year-old child, was ripped out of her mother's hands and disappeared into the air. That's the force of the hurricane that we're talking about. I'm going to now share a little video just so you understand the context of this and how powerful this was. The video is going to lag a little bit, but I will send you a link in a follow-up email. I will send you all a link.
The island of Barbuda was once a Caribbean paradise. Now it is lost. Hurricane Irma has reduced it to rubble. Homes are unrecognizable. The ruins lie scattered, torn, and ripped apart. Having survived the worst storm in living memory and knowing another is on the way, people are exhausted, hungry, and just desperate to leave.
I don't know. I'm just waiting to get evacuated from here, and then I'm
She's
going
the owner of a small hotel, 10-room hotel called Barbuda Belle.
My whole life
and this is
here,
where
so
Princess Diana used to spend a lot of her time in Barbuda.
We're not coping.
With her children.
We're definitely not coping. Everybody will tell you the same. They're not coping. Everyone is in the same situation, and nobody can help one another.
The core of the hurricane carved a cruel and deadly path through these streets. A 2-year-old died, drowned as her mother tried to move her to safer ground. But incredibly, the rest of the people on this island survived the storm's wrath.
Don't worry, we're going to get you off the island. We're going to get you to safety, and you'll be taken care of.
The Prime Minister has travelled from neighbouring Antigua to provide some reassurance.
Be patient, we're going to get you all off.
He knows this is a race against time before Hurricane Jose arrives in just a few hours. We heard him haggling for every boat, helicopter or plane to help with the evacuation.
Can it land here, though?
But fear starts to spread that not everyone will get out.
So, yeah, this is a tragic event. And remember that what we're talking about is the island of Barbuda. And the island of Barbuda is roughly 40 miles from Antigua. So the distance between Colombo and Wardua. Now, the biggest issue we had, as sad as it was for the damage that was caused to the island of Barbuda and the 4,000 residents, we were able, over 2 days before the next hurricane came, we were able to evacuate 3,000. 1,000 didn't want to be evacuated to Antigua. The difficulty I had is when I called my boss. I was in the UK, and this, of course, happened in Antigua. And I called my boss the next morning, and I said, "What's the situation?" He said, "Oh, it's fine. Not much damage. A couple of branches have fallen, and that's it." I said, "Huh?" And he said, "Yeah, nothing major." And I said, "No. You're obviously living in an area of the country that was not affected, but the rest of the country is gone. You haven't seen the videos." And I said, "I've been watching the news. This was already on the news." He said, No, there's nothing." And he held his phone. We were on a WhatsApp call outside the window to show me that nothing had happened. So actually, you have to imagine that those pictures that you saw was Colombo, but Wardua was completely unaffected. And so I, as a person who had been to the island a couple of times, couldn't believe my boss was telling me this, leave alone the rest of the world. So the first thing we did was we worked with the airlines. Again, it's people first, community first. Airlines were going to come in to repatriate their guests. So British Airways and Virgin Atlantic were sending special flights empty to come in to take all the guests out of the island. And we made sure that we worked with them. And the very first flight brought wood and nails because we knew we needed to fix roofs and create temporary structures. Normally in crisis at Heathrow and Gatwick airports, you have crisis stocks, but there's water and blankets. And we didn't need water because Antigua was not affected. And we didn't need blankets because it's a tropical country. So it would have been a waste to bring in. The second thing we needed to do was we needed to get a video out quickly to show what the real ground situation was. And this is where the social media team at the tourist board just went around the country and interviewed people on the spot just to get a sense of what was happening.
Welcome to the gem of the Caribbean, Antigua and Barbuda.
A warm welcome awaits you at our state-of-the-art VC Bird International Airport.
I must say that Antigua is in wonderful shape. 5 minutes off the boat and we're already in paradise.
Antigua was not that damaged by the storm as much as Barbuda was. The hotels are still open, the beaches are still clean, and the people are still friendly.
With Antigua, it's the people that really awaits you.
Hurricane Irma may have hit a little bit, but you can't even tell that it was ever here. The beach is wonderful. I'm having a great time.
Everything is just as we remember. No storm damage.
We're here and we're open.
And we're better than ever.
I do a lot of destination weddings.
That video, just so you know, was inspired on what Sri Lanka did as part of the Bounce Back program. That was done after the tsunami. So this was an idea that we shared from Sri Lanka. We shared what we had done in Sri Lanka and we shared it with them. And then, sorry, I've just got an ad that has just appeared, so apologies. I'm going to show you the last one. So the other thing we needed to do
or to tell
was
to
we
man
needed
up
to
when I'm just down in the dummy.
The biggest thing that Hannah did for me was to go into my mum.
So the other thing we needed to do was we needed to bring a real high-level TV program in, because even sending that video, which was done by the tourist board, it wasn't believable because people were saying, "Oh, well, you're only showing the good parts, not the affected parts," etc. So we tied up with ITV, and they have a Escape with a Mate, and this is about an emotional story of you can apply to win a holiday, and what you have to do is you have to tell your story of what your friend has done for you, and you and your friend share that with the whole world. And this was a case of where Hannah, one of the two ladies, had got sick, and she was very sick, and how her friend looked after her kid and helped her recover, etc. So that was the background. It was about the two of them, but it allowed us to use aerial footage and get on national TV the lushness of the island. Because, if a hurricane has just hit, you can always clean up a beach, you can always cut down a tree. But people want to know, does it look barren? Do the, like the landslides that we can see in some areas after Hurricane Ditva, are you going to see that? And the answer was no, because Antigua was not hit. So these aerial footage was an integral part of what we did, because we were able to have all these beautiful pictures on national TV, and we were able to do press releases to say that this was filmed after the hurricane. So I'm not going to waste any more time on this, but I will share with you those. I will share with you those videos as a follow-up email. So for those who are interested, can watch the whole video. So really, in this situation of a natural disaster, because of the scale and because of the extremity of what happened in Barbuda, we chose to first do our own video, which wasn't very successful because it was biased, because people didn't trust us. And then we tied up with the TV station to have the other one. The big thing that we did, though, is we continued it by inviting our top 10 tour operators to the island. And we did a social media fam trip. So normally when you invite tour operators, you invite the product manager or you invite the frontline staff who sell to come to Sri Lanka to visit. In this case, we got the social media manager or one of his executives to come. And the reason is that they were able to give us immediately some good publicity to their customers. They sent newsletters, they did posts live and live updates. But more importantly, the social media team then knew the destination and had their own unique footage, which meant that every time they were posting, they were going and choosing their posts rather than the stock images that they get provided from all these tourist boards. And that really had a big impact. I'm going to take questions at the end after Juliet, so please write down if you have any questions, or you can start messaging in the chat box. You can message and leave any questions there. So the last, I'm going to bring it back home to Sri Lanka, and I'm going to just touch on the tsunami. And before I do, does anybody want to share one story about the tsunami, where they were, what they were doing? Any of the DMCs, one or two, want to share? Just please speak up. You don't need to put your camera on, ideally if you do. But just what does the tsunami mean to anybody? I just want to get a judge for whether some people were too young and not really involved at that point. Any of the DMCs want to comment or have anything they want to share? Yes, go ahead, Cecilia. Hi. You have to unmute yourself, Cecilia.
Yeah, I just couldn't, it wasn't controlling. Hi, everyone. I was actually working for Peregrine Adventures at the time, and in Australia, in Sydney. And we used to take turns every weekend. Out of 7 senior managers, you take the phone home. It was a long time ago. So I remember that normally the phone would never even ring on the weekends. You'd be lucky if you had 2 phone calls, because it was just like specifically for emergencies. Anyway, it was Boxing Day at home and I was on the beach, and all of a sudden I had a call. Oh, I'm thinking about cancelling my Thailand holiday. I was like, okay, no worries, just call your office on Monday. After I got 3 of those calls, I thought something's happened. So obviously then we realized what was going on. And what we did straight away was we just recorded a message so that as soon as people picked up, they had a course of action to follow. But for Australia, it was all about Thailand. That was the main, and that impacted on people. But yeah, I mean, that's a long time ago.
Yeah.
Sri Lanka wasn't really on my radar back then.
Thank you, Cecilia. Anybody have a real life Sri Lankan situation of where they were? Anybody want to share?
Yeah. Hi, Jamie. I was,
Graham.
hi, everyone. I wasn't really involved in tourism at the time, but obviously we had friends and people we knew who were traveling here, and that really never came to the top of mind, because it was just about such a sort of we had to all mobilize ourselves from the corporate sector, the private sector, the government, and everybody just had this sort of adrenaline to help people. And I think I want to circle back to what you said originally about community. And I think there was no greater example of how communities came together in this catastrophic time. So I think that's one of the things that we can, also document in history alongside this, unspeakable tragedy, natural disaster, and I think there is a story in there that continues to resonate with how we deal with crises. We've had plenty after that as well, but not as catastrophic as that. But certainly, it's something in, I'd like to say, in our DNA, that we are able to sort of, get to that heightened sense of resolve to be able to cope with things and to manage. So yeah, it's like 20 plus years ago, and I remember that very vividly.
Thank you, Graham. And one more, I want an example of somebody who was caught up in the tsunami or almost caught up in the tsunami. Anybody have something to say? Otherwise, I'm going to volunteer somebody in a second, Murtaza, if nobody else speaks up. Okay, Murtaza, you're on the spot. Tell us what you told me yesterday. What was your experience of the tsunami?
So I was 14 years. Thanks, Jean-Marc, before I go into. So I was 14 years, and I was in the Ratmalan area, and I had to go on the next day to Panadura, where I normally live in. I went to the bus hall. My mom and dad, who were spending their holidays at my aunt's place, who they had gone earlier, at around 9 o'clock is when I had to go and get the bus. I normally take the bus, which uses the New Gaul Road, which is with the sea. For most of you who know that route to go from Moratua to Panadura, the area. And fortunately, I at that time it was unfortunate because I was running to a bus which was already moving past, and I got into the bus which normally takes the New Gaul Road, and I slipped and fell, and my leg got bruised with that pain and a little bit blood flowing out. I thought, why did this happen to me? And then I got in a bus that takes the Old Gaul Road, which takes quite some time then going through the New Gaul Road. I got into that and I was tending to my wounds. And when I'm nearing the Panadura junction, and I was there, and to see there were people running in from where the sea is towards the land side saying, I've never heard something like that, and see people just swarming and trying to get into buses and run away. And from where I stand, and to looking towards the left of from the Panadura Junction clock tower, the Rankot Vihare is a good 700 meters away from the sea. And to see even there, the Rankot Vihare, the temple, the stairs of the temple, that area also was flooded. And we saw that the water is coming, but I could do is soon get into the bus and get back into where I live, which was about 2 kilometers inland from Panadura Junction. And then I got back. I got to call my cousin, who had told that he's going to visit a friend who was right on the beach. I called him because I was afraid that something might happen to him. I asked him how is he. Fortunately, he was able to get back, and he also was in that. I was safe.
Murtaza, I'm going to interrupt you. Sorry,
Hambantota.
but Murtaza, sorry, I'm going to interrupt you just to continue. But thank you. And you see, this is the amazing thing. All of you have your story. And Murtaza, you can see, wants to share all the detail because it's still emotionally processing it, which I am too. All of us are. And so it's nothing about Murtaza. But it is, everybody has a story about that. And I'm sure you could each tell a story. So it was a huge incident. And I want you to dig deep back into that and remember where you were, what you did that day. Because we all are experts in crisis. Because as a Sri Lankan, you have all faced this crisis one way or the other. Very quickly, my story was not one of the tsunami per se. I had just got involved with the Sri Lanka Tourist Board. I was doing my training and I was going to join the London office of the Sri Lanka Tourist Board in January. And I wanted to go with my then girlfriend, now my wife, down to the beach. All the hoteliers wanted to, host me. And I said, look, I don't need a free stay, but I want to pay and go and stay in a hotel. for on Christmas Day, and then I would have been there, but all hotels were full. I couldn't get a seat anywhere, and so I ended up with a friend hiring a helicopter, Deccan Aviation, the only private helicopter to my knowledge at the time, and we took the last pictures of the coast. So this was on Christmas Day, our helicopter ride. We passed Berula and all the beautiful boats lined up there, the fishing boats from the fishing from the port, Sea Sands, and this is, I think, Club Benthuta in Benthuta. We landed the helicopter on the Benthuta beach, just in front of, just beyond Serendip Hotel, and we had staff from a hotel come out and do a little picnic for us on the beach. And then it was only a half an hour ride, so we had to get back because otherwise it was too expensive. And then, of course, as we know, this happened. And we had technically 120 minutes from the earthquake to the wave hitting. So 2 hours. Had the systems been in place, we could have easily moved inland for that 1 or 2 miles. And again, all of you know this, but a reminder of the level of the damage was because the water went out the middle picture. Everybody walked into the sea, and then the water went back out again. And of course, the disaster on the train. And the same Birla, when I went back about a week later, this was the same fishing harbor, the boats now inside the hotel. Some amazing stories came out of this, and I want to just touch on 3. Number 1, I know for a fact that Kuoni had 5 weddings postponed during this time. Can you imagine canceling a wedding? I get, but people postponed their wedding to wait till it was right and came back to Sri Lanka and had it. And I thought that was an amazing thing. As I joined the tourist board office in London, I got a call in my first week in office, and it was about a couple who were going to row from Banda Aceh in Indonesia to Galle. Actually, they were going to go on rowing machines and row. And they raised, a lot of money to help. So I said, why are you doing this? And they explained that they were staying, I think it was at the Riverina Hotel. The first wave came and broke the glass of their bedroom. The lady had some cuts on her leg. The hotel put her into a hotel taxi with a waiter from the hotel to be translator. And they went inland to go to hospital and get stitches. 2 hours later, they came back. The second wave had hit, and the hotel obviously was badly affected. And before getting into the hotel, the waiter said, excuse me, do you mind if I don't come back inside the hotel? Can I just get out of the car here? And they said, sure, but why? And he said, well, I don't know if my family's alive or dead. And they couldn't believe that waiter had been sitting there at the hospital with them, while worried about the family being alive or dead, and had not said anything. And then, can you hear me? Yeah. And then there was the second part of that story was the fact that they then went onto the beach, and on the beach they had all these, there was a long line, and there was a beach boy with a mobile phone. And this is a beach boy who had played cricket on the beach with their son, had played cricket with them. And so this boy was giving free phone calls to about 200 foreigners because he had a mobile phone that was working. So these 200 foreigners could call home and say, I'm safe. And they were wondering who's going to pay this poor guy's phone bill. And it was for this reason that they gave. It was amazing, the cases of people and what Sri Lankans did. And you all know more stories than I do of the amazing work that Sri Lankans did to help individuals. And at that time, we didn't have big websites, and we definitely didn't have social media. So at the tourist board, we had posters. So we had these posters of Dambulla Cave, Sigir Rock, tea plantations, the train. We had these beautiful posters, some of you might remember, and that was what we did. But actually, a lady, Trudy Ratau, who has passed away, she came back from Sri Lanka soon after the tsunami, and she said, I've got wonderful pictures. And at Sri Lanka Tourist Board at the time, we didn't have good pictures of the country. So whenever a photographer said they were willing to share their pictures, I was all excited. So I waited for her to come. I got her a cup of tea, and she started to share the pictures. And I wanted a picture of Sigir Rock. I was looking for a nice one of Kandy Temple and, all of these iconic places. And she had no pictures of any of the things of Sri Lanka. She only had 16 pictures of faces. And this is what had left with her. So really what I'm just trying to share here is the power of our people. And this is why when USAID supported an advertising campaign that we ran soon afterwards, we chose the people. And if you see in that picture, we have all the major religions and ethnicities covered in that. And the advert was spectacular views, wider smiles. You know you're in Sri Lanka. In Sri Lanka, even the most stunning panoramic scenes can't compare to the width of our smiles, which is why we guarantee that while you'll be doing a lot of sightseeing, you'll also be doing a lot of smiling. Think of it as a natural after effect of the perfect Sri Lankan holiday. Because at the time, there was a big sentiment about, is it right to travel when Sri Lankans are suffering? And if Sri Lankans are not happy, how can we travel and come and spend money? So this was very important. So I want to conclude with a couple of things. Number one is you have to think about the crisis you're facing, whether it is an ongoing war like we have now, it's not over, unfortunately, or is it a quick event, a very different way of approaching it. Whether there's a warning, like a hurricane, you know a hurricane's going to come 2 or 3 days before, or like the tsunami, which was completely unexpected. You need to also bear in mind whether it is natural or man-made, because when it's nature, there's a lot more empathy, a lot more support. When it's man-made, there's a little bit of an anger that can be out of it. So what do you as DMCs and hoteliers, what can we do in this crisis? It's all about the government, right? The government has to sort this out. The government has to communicate. The government has to give us a handout. The government has to let us have loan moratoriums. All of that may be true or may not be true, but what I want to focus on is what we can do. So number one is we can communicate daily with our overseas partners. It's very important. We have to be positive. We have to give hope. If we are not giving hope, then the people and our partners overseas are not going to invest. We need to be truthful, but we can twist the truth depending on the lead period. So if you're talking about targeting holidays on the 1st of April, from the 1st of April onwards, you can say what the situation in the country is going to be on the 1st. You don't need to say that the fact that there is an issue right now because you're not expecting visitors till the 1st anyways. As far as possible, use your phone, get out there, get all your staff to take pictures so we can show rather than say. Work with past customers who are already brand advocates, work on the repeaters because the repeaters will be the first to come in. As I mentioned before, invite social media teams to come in. Now is the time for influencers. If in this case, Sri Lanka is not affected, so it doesn't matter. But, like with DITVA, we need to bring in the social media people. If you're not able to be all over the country, work with your hoteliers and your drivers to get the stories on the ground. And Juliet's going to share a little bit about that in a moment. And share your daily life. The more we go out on social media, the more we show pictures of amazing food, amazing sunrises and sunsets, you're cooking, what you're having for lunch today. All of those really matter and give positive sentiment to the country. And also, let's tug at emotional heartstrings. Sometimes you really got to talk about the human factor. I was at ITB last week and listening to a seminar on the impact and partnering for impact in tourism. It was a case study from Morocco, but TUI and GTZ, the German government, were also involved in that. And it really is important to highlight. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to ask a question there, but I spoke to the moderator, Willie Legrand, and I'm following up with him. And I said, look, all of this big talk about sustainability, well, when people cancel, there's a huge cost. And what are we going to do about that? And I'll touch on that in a moment. For me, during DITVA, the single biggest piece of brilliance was what the Hill Country Tourism Bureau did. You can argue that this is a blatant violation of copyright because they use Tintin, which is heavily copyrighted, and I hope the guys in France never see it. But it was brilliant use of cartoon and a very well-known character to do that. And this was just done by a group of individuals. There was no big money. There was no big government backing. This was done by a group of individuals. This could have been you. Also, I just want to touch on the fact of duty of care. A lot of you are dealing directly with B2B. And so you're dealing with EU package travel regulation. I will share this presentation so you can use this link and go and look at it yourselves. But it's when two or more elements are used, it becomes a package. There will be a contract between you and the tour operator. You need to read that with a fine-tooth comb. If you're doing direct business, the contract can be enforced in their country if they have bought online on a website. So be careful of that. And be aware of insurance and jurisdiction clause. And this is basically where your insurance company in Sri Lanka will cover you for the cost of loss of income from a Sri Lankan perspective. So if you're a doctor and you earn 200,000 rupees and you get injured for 1 month, then you'll be paid 200,000 rupees. But if the doctor is in Germany and the German doctor gets paid 10,000 euro, then his insurance will be asking for 10,000 euro, not 200,000 rupees. So it's being aware of that. Last point is about impact of cancellations. As you know, we have lost December and most of March through this. I'm hoping I can see, I saw this morning that more flights are starting to come in, but a lot of people have canceled. So we need to protect our drivers. We need to protect our suppliers, the fishmonger, the vegetable supplier who comes to our hotels, and we need to support the hotel staff. I know we always say that guests are important. The customer is always right. But for a sustainable destination, for tourism to continue, the team comes first, in my humble opinion. Sri Lanka chooses to take the whole cost of cancellations. We all have contracts in place. We all can demand 100% cancellation fee. And most hotels have in the past waived that cancellation fee. But why are we doing this? You know, because when you waive the cancellation fee and you don't take money, you're then endangering the very people you employ and their sub-suppliers and the freelance drivers, etc., and the guides. So I just really want to think, you know, push people to postpone, don't cancel, and charge a small cancellation fee if you're legally allowed to do so, because you need to make sure that your partners, your drivers, your suppliers, your hoteliers survive. Otherwise, we're going to have another wave of people leaving the country again. So I'm going to stop on that. I'm going to play this video and then share and introduce Juliet. So this is just a quick video that Juliet made.
Coombe. I'm an author and a photojournalist, and I absolutely loved meeting the people through Secrets of Ceylon. At Kulu, it was the guides who are all-rounders who showed me how they upcycled everything from the old tents, turning them into wonderful places to sit and birdwatch, to actually taking the water lilies out of the lake and putting them in vases that were made from the old jam pots that we enjoyed for breakfast. Going further into the hills and discovering Idal Villa was an absolute pleasure with the owners Darshi and Darshana. They were fascinating. They told me not only about the train, but also the people, allowing me to go and experience how to do sweet treats in the village, where I had an experience over a wood fire and actually creating my own little cakes, which were absolutely yummy. A killer brought me flowers when I stayed at Floating Mountain and enjoyed the views. In fact, he tailor-made everything that I wanted. So whatever your dietary issues, he will sort them out, and he'll take you on all sorts of extraordinary secret adventures. I got to make a magical piece out of an old sari and make a wish whilst I was there, and that's certainly to return and do section 3 of the Pico Trail. But whether it was meeting the archaeologists at Kulu Safari, and this was Narina, who was so interesting because she brought to life Katragama entrance into Yala and the history of the people who once lived there. Today they're no more, but they're amazing archaeological sites which just add another layer of interest when you're traveling through this magnificent park. Imagining waking up and going off on your very own ox cart journey with Izuru at Hotopola, which is a magical place.
Because I'm going to shorten that because we have really run into time, and my apologies, Juliet, for eating into some of the time. So I'm now going to hand over to Juliet. Juliet is an amazing woman. I've known of her for many, many years. I'd almost say for decades, but only really got to know her over the last couple of weeks. She used to live full-time in Galle. She's as Sri Lankan as all of us. She's an amazing author. She's releasing a new book. She's written numerous articles on Sri Lanka and done some amazing photography. She was involved in bringing the British Guild of Travel Writers, over 40 media, to Sri Lanka a couple of months ago. And she is great at getting the story. I learned so much about our hoteliers and our partners just listening to the questioning that Juliet was doing to them. So Juliet, I'm going to share the floor with you for the next 10 or 15 minutes to share some of your thoughts on these three questions. Over to you, Juliet.
Hi, nice to see all of you. And this is not just for now, this is for the next, I would say 100 years, but let's just start with this year. I've come up with this thing called Post the Moment. I do believe one postcard could save the world, but certainly some great storytelling can be game changing. Behind the scary headlines that have terrified my own children and made me then want to give up living, they made me really think that we have to look at the true narrative, because I talk to people every day on the ground and there are amazing things going on all the time, things that make you laugh. Now, one of the things we haven't talked about is humor. I know it seems inappropriate, but for me, how extraordinary is it to have leopards wandering around Peradeniya University? They're slightly worried, Jean-Marc, but actually all my friends now want to go to Peradeniya University, much more than Harvard. Imagine being able to see wild leopards, not just in Yala, the tea country. If you happen to be wandering through, they pop out occasionally, little tails can be seen. But actually in Peradeniya University, they love it so much. Clearly, they know that you've got the best university in the world. They want to go and study there. So a little bit of humor in these disastrous situations smash you right the way through. So what do I mean by Post the Moment? I spoke to lots of media people who said, Juliet, just stop. There's a war, third world war, just forget it. What nonsense. It doesn't matter what the disaster is. We have to move on. And actually, Sri Lanka has one of the most beautiful, extraordinary, fascinating, every day is a story. For me, I have written countless books because they're just so, I could write for hundreds of years on Sri Lanka. There's so many subjects of interest. So what I want each of you to do, just as a very simple thing, because if we could get all 400 DMCs to do this, is to post a moment, a funny moment, a happy moment. Now, I'm going to just give you a little kind of story of what I mean by posting a moment. So people always think, well, what does that mean, Juliet? Well, we've got Instagram, and I'm told TikTok now is one of the most popular ways to get through to the media as well. So think about making your own TikToks. But publications need photos. All the National Geographic, Wanderlust, there are photo competitions across the whole world. New Zealand, Australia, brand new markets. If we're not going to be brave enough to travel to you, Aussies, Kiwis, they'll get on the plane. We've got Jetstar coming in, rechange your locations, and also keep building Sri Lanka as a brand. So I'll just give you one example. So I've got someone painting my new wildlife book. He actually painted Brief Gardens. He calls himself an art slave because he's not allowed to do anything else. So let me just look at one picture, for example. Let's take a picture of the elephant gathering. So we have a picture of the elephant gathering. It's the largest gathering in the world. Now, you might think everybody knows that, but actually people have no idea that the largest elephant gathering happens in Sri Lanka. We're producing a poster right now to tell you over 100 things that only happen in Sri Lanka. I had no idea that 28% of the world's actual flora, fauna, flowers can only be seen in Sri Lanka. In fact, some of the top hoteliers this week have gone, oh my goodness, that's extraordinary. I didn't know that only in Sri Lanka could you only see the purple leaf monkeys. I just took them for granted. They ran across my roof in the Galle Fort, which is where I'm based. And by the way, wouldn't everybody want to go there? It's not changed just because just off there was a ship sunk by appalling behaviour. It's not changed. It's exactly like that. And actually, you can have it to yourself right now. So it's even more of a reason. So going back to just a quick story, elephants gathering, do we do that? How about instead of saying elephants gathering, meet, around the waterfall, why not make them laugh and say the boys are back in town? Just changing a caption can make you smile or giggle. And you know, one of the things Jean-Marc was saying, well, how do we get hold of the newspapers, magazines, etc.? Believe you me, they're also scared. They're also facing the same catastrophic disaster. So make them laugh. Don't say we've got a picture of an elephant. Make them giggle, because the moment you giggle, you've got them. And the moment you start to show pictures, all of you, different kinds of pictures, and that's why if we can say Sri Lanka is going to post the moment, let's say we get 1,000 of you to post the moment, we don't need social influencers, because they'll be taking our ideas and they will be sharing them. People come to an island because it's full of smiles. Jetwing, their entire campaign is, we only employ if you can smile. If you've got a great smile, we can teach you everything else. Well, you know, Sri Lanka is an island of great smiles, even at the most horrifying moments. I remember, you know, when the war started and we were doing the Gore Literary Festival, I'd been employed by Jeffrey Jobs and Louise Salwell. They blew up a bus and they said, we have to cancel the Literary Festival. I went, why? Why do we have to cancel it? Absolutely not cancelling. This was the first one. I was told we need to cancel. It's not responsible. I said, I don't care. We're ringing everybody up. We're telling them all to come here. We will have an evacuation if we get blown up. And we created an evacuation. In fact, Ashok Ferry made a joke with my kit of evacuation, which he did in his opening speech, which entertained everyone no end. But what it did was that not only did everybody come, but that literary festival drove people to become Booker Prize winner, to win all sorts of book prizes around the world. It put Sri Lanka on the map in 2007. We won Best Literary Festival in the world. How do you think that message in the middle of the worst war? And I sat there, you know, with people going, we have to leave now, we have to leave. Actually, when the worst thing happens, you turn it around. You don't look at, you know, the tsunami. I was employed by Lonely Planet because I was always the positive girl. What did I do? I went along the beaches and I went, what's going on here? Oh, all the TVs are gone. Yay, we've got rid of TVs. And the puppeteers were out doing puppet shows. And I went the revival of Sri Lankan puppetry, handmade puppets, telling stories from ancient times. Children could ask those puppets, I've lost my mummy, what do I do? And the puppets would answer the questions. So not only did it revive one of the greatest forms of art, storytelling, but I told that story. It went across the national airline. It was Lonely Planet's leading story. You know, I took every positive thing, every positive story, and I smashed it out there. You're out there on the ground every day. Every day is special in Sri Lanka. You know, the food, there is no other food like it in the world. The way it's packaged. I know for my dad, it was the coconut seller, the little old lady, you know, somebody who's tiny. My dad was a giant. Just that humorous moment where somebody's sharing a coconut. For you, that might just be it's a coconut. But for somebody who just gets drinks from a supermarket, there is no little street peddler. There's nobody stop engaging them in a little story about ginger tea, why it's good for your health. These are selling points. The ordinary people in Sri Lanka are extraordinary. I did a talk at the Sri Lankan High Commission at the height of the cyclone situation. We turned it around. We talked to media. We said, stop selling these stories, start telling other stories, and I listed the positive stories. But you know, the most positive thing for me was your military went up there and rescued people. I feel anywhere in Sri Lanka, I am going to be rescued. But not only did they rescue your people in a sort of Marvel-like film with, you know, chaos, landslides, they didn't care. They were going to get people, didn't matter, Sri Lanka, Western, back to safety. But they even rescued a dog stuck up in the middle of, you know, absolutely nowhere. And I told that story, and there were so many people in that room who were not really thinking about going. There were journalists, there were people like Lynn Hughes, who was going to go, who suddenly went, oh my God, there's underwater galleries going into the ocean, chessboards. My goodness, there's wildlife we didn't know. So many stories. And everybody in that room just started to talk about stories, great stories. No one even talked about the cyclone. When they went to the pub, the cyclone had blown away, and people were thinking, well, we could do a book, we can actually do a news story. There was a guy called Mark Julian Edwards who's gone on to win not just best photographer worldwide in the Travel Photography Awards for Teapotty, and it's of Sri Lanka. It's a boy on a bus traveling to Jaffna because it's this moment of travel, how magical that is. That first exciting bus ride, that picture captivated. Well, it wasn't AI generated, it was just very real, just the boy on the bus. He's now gone on with the film we made as part of the travel photography thing, which everyone's like, oh, well, you know, we're here, and I said, no, we need to tell a story about the elephants. So we did every single special thing in that film. He's now been nominated. Oh, actually, not nominated. He's one of the shortlist of winners for Inspire. And one of the stories that touched everybody was me going into a temple with him. And I said, look, you know, what's great is they tie these things, they get the little crates and they put a baby in it. And this is a way in which you can wish to have a child. Something very simple like that in Japanese. It's a very simple thing. And he said, well, do you know people who've done it? And I said, well, actually, I did it because we really want a baby. So in 2006, I did it. He said, we need to film that. So instead of saying this temple is this, oh, this is that, we went in there and I explained the colors and how I took this crate with my husband. I tied it to the temple, to the tree. And what happened was, exactly a year later, Samad was born, and Samad is actually 18 years old. And, you know, he was born, you know, post the tsunami into war. He was a war baby. And for me, I felt so lucky that we'd had this moment, which was then shared on this short film, which is now up for, as I say, shortlisted for another major award for Mark Julian Edwards. So what I'm saying is we need to go into the detail. You all have special things that we don't know, little secrets of Ceylon. What I loved about it, why I enjoyed traveling to all these places. And I've traveled so many different ways. I've been to every hotel. I wrote Asia's Best Villa Guide. I wrote Asia's Best Hotel Guide. I was one of the team on all of these. So I know what the best of the best was. I love the fact that everywhere there was an experience. We weren't charged for it. It was fun. It was different. And I kind of found things that were extraordinary because people said, I said, oh, I love that. I love what they've made in the garden there. That's extraordinary. How do they make that out of iron and put together a little train, you know, for Idelvia? And they went, oh, the guy's just down the road. He does metalwork. And I said, well, can I go? And instead of saying, oh, no, you know, because Secrets of the Salon is all about facilitating what the guest wants. Here's this annoying journalist going, I'd like to go and see the metalwork guy who made a train. I went down there. It blew me away. This guy got old cogs, bits of bicycle wheel. It looked like the most chaotic workshop. It looked like your worst kind of husband's den. It looked horrific. And then he said, you want an owl? And I said, I love owls. I've got this thing about owls. I think they're lucky. And my name's Owlie. You probably all noticed I've got very big owls. And I used to sit on a tree when I was little. They go, come on, Owlie, come in, come on. So this guy started putting an owl together, you know, with bolts and everything, firing stuff in all directions. It was alchemy in action. And I took this picture and I just posted it. Jean-Marc went, where's that? I want to go and do that. And so if Jean-Marc, who's done pretty much everything in tourism, wants to go and do it, and the fact that it was facilitated by his team on the ground, it's those little stories, those post the moment that you guys can do because you have them in absolute bucket loads. And not only that, you can enter photography awards, you can win prizes. There are photography awards all over the world. Every single newspaper magazine needs photos, pictures that are original, different, quirky. That's a way of getting the imagery over. So not moving on from your Instagram, look up photography competitions, look up newspapers. You'll find pretty much everyone, whether it's a Telegraph, Wanderlust, they have this big double page spread. What better way? And you know what? If your picture is good enough, you could win a couple of £1,000. So, you know, we could actually be pulling out some of, and we could actually take at the end of this, post the moment. I've got a gallery in the Gulf. I'd love to exhibit the best of post the moment that we can put up and frame to the world to show that it doesn't matter what the crisis. I've been through all these things. I've been through the tsunami. I've been through the civil war. I've been through the bombings. I've lost my husband. Most people give up at that point because they go home. My home is Sri Lanka. My children are Sri Lankan. You're one of the greatest civilizations in the world. And when you tell people that, and you realize you are better and bigger than the Maldives, and everyone laughs at me because they laughed at me when I said in 2007, we will become one of the greatest literary centers. We will outrun India. Everybody laughed. And it's on an Ashok Ferry film that he did, and everyone's laughing. I'm coming out of the Closenberg. I'm in my swimming costume. I was a bit younger then. Don't worry, Jean-Marc. It wasn't that frightening. I came out in my swimming costume and said, and we in Sri Lanka are going to launch the best writers in the world. We are going to win Bookers. We're going to win. People honestly put it in as a bit of fun, but even Ashok went, that's Juliet exaggerating a little bit too far. She's a storyteller, but we'll let it go. And look at us now. Look where we've got to. Look at even in America. It's a Sri Lanka winning the top. So actually, I just believe that. And I put that message out there. And actually, you have a thing called Yantra Tantra Mantra. One of the things I believe is if you put out and manifest that the country will become the best of the best in the world. That is what happens. I believe that in the Gulf Fort. The Gulf Fort, when I first arrived, unfortunately, was falling down, rat infested. Some people think that was glamorous. It wasn't great for the younger generation. Today, it's one of the coolest places on the planet. People just love to go. People tell me how lucky I am. I can tell you, people told me what an idiot I was for being there and staying there in the Civil War. And I could see how beautiful it was. With the Pico Trail, people told Miguel Cunard, whose idea it was, and me, that it would never work. It just hadn't got legs. And I just said, let's just do it. It's 300 kilometers. We can put it together. We can weave it together. He created it, and I told the stories. As the stories went out there, people went, wow, we want to do that. And so we went from being idiots, and I worked on it for 2 years tirelessly for free, let me tell you, because I believed in it. Look at it now. It's won the British Guild of Travel Writers Award. Time magazine says it's the best in the world. We have won so many accolades. Journalists have walked it. There's not been any kind of let's persuade. People have been gobsmacked. It's been life-changing. We now want to do a book on it. And this is from an idea everyone belittled, not at a time of war. We were at the height of tourism in 2018. This is the height of tourism. And people said, you're crazy, but we did it. So I want you all to do your craziest thing. I'm here for you. You can email me at any time. I will try and get stories out. If you've got a good story, I will make the time to facilitate that. We are one big team. And if we work as one big team, Sri Lanka won't hit 3 million. It will hit more than that. But it's not the numbers. It's the quality of people who come. And I would like to see, you know, us launching, as crazy as it is, you know, golden tickets, citizenship awards for people who come who really want to make a difference to the country for 5 years. I would like to see us producing labs and creating bird watching challenges. I don't know if you realize, but you have so many birds you cannot see anywhere else in the world. I would like that really brought out. I'd like us to photograph the endemic birds and say only in Sri Lanka as part of our moments. And I would also like to see people stay longer. So whoever's in the country and they don't want to rush off because of what's going on, encourage them to stay longer, because the more time they spend. I've just been doing that this morning with 2 friends who are up on the golf course and got it to themselves. I said, why leave on the 28th? Why not stay another month? You can make a big difference. And each person who stays a bit longer right now will make a big difference to the drivers, the coconut seller, to every single person in the ecosystem. And we owe it to every single person to make a difference. I know we're short on time, but I am a phone call away. I'm there for you. And it's a real privilege to be part of Sri Lanka and to have Sri Lankan sons. It really is. It's a huge honor. Thank you.
Juliet, thank you so much. That's absolutely amazing.